Greetings, fellow travelers, and welcome to The Way of the Showman, where we view the world through the lens of showmanship. I am your gracious host, Captain Frodo, and it is great to be back here with you. I am also just back from having done a gig, my first serious gig since the middle of March, and it was glorious, as I told you last time. I left the place and put the mask on and went through copious amounts of alcohol and disinfectant on my way back. And on the way back, as I landed at the airport in Oslo, there was you can get tested for the COVID virus right there at the airport whilst you wait for your luggage. So there was 4 or 5 people ahead of me in line, and they were taking people in really quickly. So pretty much as soon as I was done with that test, which they called me if I have it, and I just was confirmed that the test was negative, which of course made me very sad. I'm a very positive man, but sometimes we just have to endure the lemons that life throws at you. And anyway, I don't have it, but I'm still in self-imposed quarantine by my father's house by the lake, summer house. Very common thing in Norway to have a summer house. Anyway, it's beautiful here. I'm no longer recording in a self-made cubby house. I'm instead recording in a bunk bed, which is a big step up for this career as a recording artist. Anyway, it's good to be negative sometimes. And this week is going to be back kind of to how this whole thing started. When I first started, we talked about all sorts of subjects. I talked a little bit more personal and whatever. And since episode 9 now, so the last lots of episodes, we have just been focusing on these mythopoetic explorations. So I thought today we'll take one little break from that, and I will talk instead about childhood, something which is something that I'm very interested in as a phenomenon. As you will hear today, I've made myself a lot of thoughts about that. But I think it's still very important, this mythopoetic carnival. I think exploring the idea of what it would be like for us to have our own mythology, to stand firmly on some kind of ground, so you, by knowing who you are and where you stand stronger in the creation of your work, and also you stand stronger in when things go against you. Because this time that is going on now is very strange for us. We do, after all, make a life and a living from having groups of people together in a room. And my explorations has become, potentially abstract in a way. We've looked at showmanship I've been sort of trying to frame it in a much bigger context through all different things of evolution and philosophy and whatnot, deep psychology, through Jung, as we did a bit last week. And this is something that I've been doing for years, and it's both as a writer and a thinker, and it's this mythopoetic carnival has been the fuel for a lot of my creativity. And anyway, this reimagining of ourselves and questioning of who we are. Just recently, my friend Mitch Jones, some people might know as Captain Ruin, awesome punk intellectual performer who I very much enjoy. He's just written an article for circustalk.com that's called Detachable Passion, an open letter to the performing artists everywhere. And as whenever he writes something, I absolutely recommend you go on reading this. And he is also exploring what it means to be a performer in these times when we can't get it together. And his thoughts are going more towards performers as part of of how we are sort of within the capitalist worldview, with making money from it, because we've all been trapped in this game, or some people might still have chosen to be there and whatever, but he questions whether, these are actually two different things. Are you doing this solely to create opportunities to make money? If that is the case, then this is an absolute disaster for you. But if we could disassociate our art from the direct thing of making money, if we ask ourselves that, are we still interested in showing our work and creating things if it is not making us money? If the answer is yes, then we can then start to look at our work in another way. Because today, maybe most of the things which are most needed are not nearly as financially rewarding as the things that are perpetuating the status quo. Maybe some of the artistic creations that we could be creating are not the ones that are going to make us the most money, so we wouldn't have noticed them or thought about them until now. So this time, where money is no object, as we spoke about, when for once we might be able to see clearly through the cloud of greed, of wanting more or comparing ourselves to others, and then we can see things that will be good, really good, things that spring just from our love of creation, and that thing we do because it's good for you, and good for me, and good for those around us. And that, I believe, very often is the best, and that for everybody. And that's a big part of what we need at the moment. We need to think bigger, not think separately, and to think about togetherness and about how all is connected. This time is given to us, and all we can do is decide what to do with it. We've all been given a respite from our normal self, a time to unlearn, a major disruption. We've all panicked. I certainly have. We've all been afraid. Some of us have had to make drastic alterations to our lives and lifestyles. We're, as the king put it, all shook up. With this distance to what's normally going on, maybe you'll eventually hear something calling you. I did, and that you're listening to it right now. I'm calling to you, and this was my calling. And I don't think it was the wrong number. As a creator and a creative, as a performer or crew, a tech or an artist, you'll hear. Now that you have some room to breathe, we can hear and discover a quieter voice, see the flame of a smaller candle, a tiny fire for your lantern. To listen, take time to listen now to those around you, the environment, and I don't just mean like trees and grass, but like everything, your neighborhood in the cities. There's something there that needs doing. It'll pop out. It'll stand out. All of a sudden it'll become relevant to you. Someone needs something. A gap. A gap that you didn't notice before. But not a it's just a gap that needs to be filled. Not a new market to be cashed in, but an opportunity for growth, for something meaningful, something which in the hustle and bustle of chasing our careers and making bacon and donuts, whatever we do, when that thing that we have just discovered would just seem silly and unthinkable. And look at me, talking about tarot as a secret doorway to an imaginary carnival and sacred clowns using mystic truths to change the world. Something I didn't think I would have time for. Not this much time. What you find might have seemed like a waste of time before you had the before you had the time to breathe and reflect, and to empty yourself out a little, so that there became some room for something new to enter. Maybe we can become artists that creates good art, fertile art, and not just fine art, or not just what Mitch might think of as just decorations, or pandering, decorations on top of capitalism, or pandering to capitalism. And I hope that we can achieve these kinds of things with the time that's been given to us. And this is, as far as I see, this is the way of the future. For that new light, that new little candle in your lantern, it doesn't just light your way. It can serve as a beacon for others who are lost as well. And if that's not what's important for the show man, us who shows man who shows man the world, who are on the way, showing the way, if that's not important for us as a realization, then I am lost and looking for a lantern in the dark to guide me along the way. With all that said, I will not hold you further now, and we will delve into the world of ideas. Explorations in the kingdom of childhood. Just before we start, a little preface that when I made myself these thoughts that I'm going to share here today, I was in the middle of performing a season of shows for children, or for families really. So 4 years ago, my friend Søren Østergaard, the creator and star attraction of the Danish show Circus Nemo, sort of, I guess, what could I call it? He challenged me to create a family version, together with him, of course, like a translation, if you will, of his fantastic adult circus, Circus Nemo. For anyone who knows anything about Danish circus, this is the gem. This is an extraordinary alternative thing driven by this clown. I guess you could call him character actor, extraordinary performer and improviser. But anyway, we created a show there, that show that was a family version of that, called Circus Barnley, and we presented it 2 years in a row, in 2017 and 18, and it was a very, very interesting time, and I'm very, very grateful that I got to do that creation and perform those shows. It was a seminal moment of me becoming aware of what it would be like to perform for family audiences. So here we go. I swapped to the present tense, and I wrote this whilst living in a beautiful purpose-built wooden living wagon, complete with stained glass windows in the lovely little bathroom. And Søren Østergaard's humor and ideas of what circus can be aligns enough with mine that he has given me complete freedom in the creation and formation of the material, whilst at the same time being an amazing director in shaping and adding to the final creation of the show. As I am wont to do, I spent an excessive amount of time philosophically contemplating my new audience. Who are they? The children. For the last 20 years or more, I have been almost exclusively performed for adults. I am an adult myself, so there is no need for much thoughts on who my audience is, beyond restrictions in language comprehension, if performing in other countries, or the odd cultural reference. Children, on the other hand, are different. I'm no longer one of them, even though people often say I have a childlike occupation and disposition, that there is so much play in my existence as a showman, and there is. But this is adult play. It's different. I play with the intentions of learning something, or to show someone something. I play with balls, wooden spoons, balloons, swords, and bears on wheels to discover material for acts. There is purpose to my play, a purpose that is not present in the way kids play. In my writing, I imagine stories and worlds, but they're for others to read or hear, eventually. I am a pretend child, an adult disguised as a child. My play is goal-oriented and goal-directed. It's directed towards achieving something beyond the play itself, something other than the play. It's like when the teacher says, "Well, now we are going to play shop so that we can learn how to buy things, how to shop, and prepare us for the responsibility of handling money." This is not real play, not free play. The guidance that creates restrictions in which makes it learning rather than true play. Children learn immensely from their own free play, but it's qualitatively different when it springs from the child. Free play has no other aim than reveling in the play itself. In play, as in almost every other thing, a child is different to an adult. As a showman, I must know my audience. To be worthy of them all lending me their attention, I must have put in the necessary work into understanding them and the kingdom they inhabit. This essay is an attempt to summarize some of the things I've been taking into account when I created my family show. Things I have read and insights I've had about the little bastards that have been having me creeping out of bed at 9 in the morning to teach juggling and play circus for an hour before I started the shows there in Denmark. As I gather these thoughts, I'm again spurred on in questioning the structure and content of my show, the things I say and the things I don't say, as I step into the sawdust ring in our miniature canvas circus tent. Am I meeting them for who they are and how they see the world? Am I really meeting them on their own terms? To understand that, I need to understand and look a little bit deeper into who are they? For they're not like us. They look like us, but they're smaller, and there's something odd about their proportions. The smallest ones, they have such big heads they can't make their hands meet if they reach up and around their heads. And that is a grotesque image if we transfer it to us adults. Imagine I reached for the sky, fold my arms around my head, and my hands, they couldn't touch. What a prodigiously outsized head or grotesquely shortened arms I would have. The little ones, their point of view is always upwards, and objects filling every room, the buttons on elevators, and all the furniture, the chairs and tables, they all appears to them to belong to giants. But the differences go deeper than odd body sizes and proportions. Their minds are different too. They behave, they crave, and enjoy very different things than us. What truly gets them going, gets them into their flow states, are to us repetitive, unstructured, aimless, and outright boring. We have a name for this kind of misbehavior. We call it play. We adults haven't got time for it. We have serious, goal-oriented business to attend to. If we grown-ups, against our better judgment, are persuaded to play with a child, perhaps our own, it is an arduous affair. After playing with my daughter for even just half an hour, I need to relax afterwards. It's hard for me. Her flow is not mine, and attempting to stay within her flow is very tiring. Whilst when she comes home from school tired after a long day, she frequently gets into a good session of self-play with her little toys, and after the session she emerges seemingly rested and ready to take on the next part of her day. Among children, a whisper of warning is passed round the playgrounds. Beware, before you know it, you're one of them. The adults. They know we're not like them. I don't know how many ways we talk past each other. Sometimes as I stand before a child in a circus ring trying to get them to partake in something seemingly simple like playing a slide whistle and pretending they're a snake charmer, I am dumbfounded as to how chaotic the attempt at communication can be. It can become so strange. In those moments I am reminded of two adults from two completely different cultural backgrounds trying to find common ground. But in many ways, the children are even further apart from us than adults from halfway around the world. They are like an entirely different species. Now, anyone who spent any time with kids knows that their behavior seems directionless, and that they can't even do the simplest tasks like scrambling eggs, tying their shoelaces, or do their tax returns, which of course they don't need to, since most of them can't even hold down a job. No wonder childhood can seem like something one is stuck in, and the sooner one can escape into adulthood, the better. A whole industry has popped up to help save our children from prolonged childhood. Educational toys, games, apps, TV shows, as well as genius programs in learning institutions that all are aimed at escalating brain growth and intelligence boosting potential of children, to rescue them from the time-wasting, pointless existence in the repressive kingdom of childhood. Behind the attempt to rescue them from childhood lies an assumption that a human being's development is a linear process, beginning with a child helpless, inefficient, and inexperienced, and ending with the full potential of mankind, the adult, filled with capabilities, resourcefulness, and experience. If we can just skip past all the childish, time-wasting, and aimless play, we can get to the important stuff sooner. Adulthood is, after all, where all the important stuff happens. Biological adults, they partake in the evolutionary cornerstones of mate selection and reproduction, leading to child rearing, leading to me writing this article. Only in adulthood do we become productive members of society and learn to hold down a job, make money, scramble eggs, and fill out those tax returns. My question is whether the things children do and the ways they do them serves purposes beyond merely preparing them to become adults. Are their activities really only pointing to the future? Or do they perhaps also serve to fulfill the child at a particular stage they are at? Is it maybe important that the fulfillment happens in just those ways at exactly that time? Perhaps even this forms the foundation upon which the rest of the human is built. Without a solid and well-constructed foundation, very few things remain robust. And this is something, of course, that's very pertinent to us here, with me having gone through all these episodes of Mythopoetic Exploration in attempting to find a solid foundation to stand on. And there's 2 more episodes of that to come. But I digress. Let's look into metamorphosis. Because I mentioned that children are like a different species, but of course this is not entirely true. They behave and desire different things than adults do, but still they are us. The image that springs to mind is the butterfly. Its life cycle has several very distinct phases: egg, caterpillar, chrysalis, and butterfly. The caterpillar is not an immature, unfinished butterfly. It is a distinct animal in its own right, as perfectly adapted to its leaf-munching life as a butterfly is to its flying, nectar-drinking, mate-seeking existence. Both have been shaped to their own perfection by the great universal intelligence of evolution. What is good for the grub, necessary in fact, like eating prodigious amounts of leaves, are severely detrimental and unimportant to the butterfly. Neither one is more important than the other, and each one must realize their own needs to fulfill their destinies. Well, if I may use such a word about the grub. Children are not just unfinished grown-ups striving towards becoming adults. They are our caterpillar stage, an aspect of our species uniquely adapted to the demands their life and environment throws their way. They have their own demands, cognitive, physical, and emotional, and I don't think these can be developed and fulfilled by adult behaviors and solutions. As an excited student of evolution, I am pretty sure childhood as a thing has been shaped by evolution's non-random tools of natural selection, or death as it's also known. Those traits in childhood that aided the survival and optimization of the species, all stages of development included, are favored and passed on, one would have to presume. The characteristics of childhood should be as well adapted and important as any other adult trait. If any of our adult needs or passions aren't met, illness, mental or physical, is always close by, and such it must also be with childhood. Thus, I use this as an argument that childhood is not something that needs to be hurried along or that you need to be hurried through. Perhaps the regime in the kingdom of childhood is not as repressive as what it might first have appeared. Like with a symphony, the first movement is not just something that we have to endure so that we can get to hear the final chord of the final movement. We listen to and experience the richness of emotion, beauty, and thoughts that it inspires along the way. Each movement is to be enjoyed for its own unique contribution to the whole, leaving the final chord rich, majestic, and fulfilling exactly because of the sum and order of everything that led to it. If you fast forward through the first movements, the final chord becomes empty and pointless. And this is a picture of life itself. Enjoy it and participate fully in it as it happens, or else the final chord will become empty and will leave you at the end wishing you had paid more proper attention along the way. I would also expect the content, the proclivities and the delights that we find in the behavior of children to be evolution's optimal solutions to the problem of survival, and also the development of our abilities, mental, physical, and emotional. The way it all points to the future might be how a well-rounded, autonomous, pleasant, and self-assured individual, arriving out of the chrysalis stage of childhood into adulthood, with more luck in their healthy survival and enjoyment of life that will aid a good life and mate selection and a serious business of being adult. What does kids do? If we now have some idea of who they are, what do they do? An example of things kids do that is good for them, but not necessarily so for adults, is the way they often believe they believe that they are more skilled than they really are. And apparently this is because children who overestimate their own abilities attempt more challenging tasks and persist longer than more realistic or rational children. And this increased persistence boosts learning. A child standing with their skateboard over the edge of the vertical drop of a half pipe, and they really think that they can drop in, they succeed more often than those who perhaps wisely refrains from dropping in at all. Also, if you ever see a child who tries to put on a show, you might know what I'm talking about. Their ability to perform the skills they say and imagine themselves presenting, as well as their abilities to keep our attention, fall short of great showmanship by adult standards. It's got some naive charm, but, in their minds, though, They're great, and this leads to persistence and enthusiasm which might push them along the way of the showman into the greatest and most important showboys and girls the world has ever seen. At some point, their awareness grows, and the antics of the 3 to 7-year-olds change. They become better judges of their own capabilities. It's never fully aligned with reality, of course, and it never will be, even as adults. The Dunning-Kruger effect makes fools of us all. The Dunning-Kruger effect is the particular cognitive bias that people with low ability at a task, how they overestimate that little ability they have. They know just enough to not know that they don't know very much. That happens to all of us. And by the time the kids become adults, the childish showmanship would be outright offensive and inappropriate, but for a kid it's charming and absolutely appropriate. Along the way, there is a metamorphosis, and the childlike traits vanishes or are transformed. I try to incorporate and encourage this behavior in my show. I use magic and silly props to make them achieve impossible things, like making something invisible float in the air. An egg from a chicken's phantom pregnancy flies under a red silk handkerchief. They don't know how they did it, because I make it seem like it is them who's doing it. But since I, an adult, claim that they succeeded, and the audience roars with positive response, I hope and think that it boosts the feeling of overconfidence in that child that's helping me in the ring, and also in the children watching it happen. Because the common denominator of all childlike behavior is play, a particular type of free play children wholeheartedly engage in if we adults leave them undisturbed long enough in a safe environment. And this is key. The environment must be such that the child feels it can fail without serious consequences. It's an as-if kind of attitude. It's a let's pretend. In many ways, a child's whole existence is about play. Through play, children make sense of the world. Engaged in it, they gain some control over their lives, giving them their first sense of autonomy. It also develops their creativity and gives them room to explore their whole personality. What better way for an individual to discover who they are? Knowing how important the environment is for stimulating play, I work hard to make sure the children in the circus tent, as well as the kid in the ring helping me, knows that they're about, whatever it is that they're about to do, it's going to be easy, and that there is nothing they can do that is wrong. My body language, the way I talk, the time I take before getting to the task at hand, it's all aimed towards making them relax. It still does not always work, and I try to show them that we're all just playing, but the children in the ring often become dead serious. They can easily freeze up under the perceived pressure. I try very hard to not underestimate how easy it is for a child to feel pressured. Play is the child's work, my mother used to say. She was a Steiner Waldorf kindergarten teacher for most of her life. As children, this is important, I think, because children take play very seriously. And so should we adults do. Play serves many of the same functions that work does for adults. It gives children purpose, comfort, and it's fun. Most adult work does not tick all those boxes, but it should. Mine certainly does, or did until this pandemic. Anyway, for my family shows, play and playfulness are essential, and I aim to weave it throughout the performance. Playful is the way. The material in the show must be presented. Play needs time and a certain feeling of relaxedness. I try to find ways of making room for this in my routine, all of my routines, and let there be time to take side steps if the children suggest something or I see an opening. Give them room to breathe, think, and respond. I'm currently trying to tune into this every day as I perform, as the circus director of Circus Barnley, but also falls to me to drive the show forward, but still I search to balance this with a feeling of play. And then we get to this concept about time and place, that here and now is the official time and place of the kingdom of childhood. The expression FOMO floats around these days, fear of missing out, which is a pervasive apprehension that others might be having rewarding experiences from which one is absent. We parents have it about parties and whatever else we feel we're missing out on, but we also have FOMO on behalf of our children. We fear that they're missing out on future opportunities, be it school, university, or careers. Children, they don't live in the future. They live in the now. If we, as adults can protect them and give them a safe environment, then they will be consumed by the now, like the most ardent Zen practitioners, swinging their wooden swords with the intensity and seriousness of Rembrandt's paintbrushes. They will be in their flow zone, and at peak experience, so deep into creative and joyful experience that time never is long enough to satisfy their need for play. Of course, in the real world, sometimes the flow of play doesn't come, and the tragedy and the gravity of the situation is so severe that it is as if the boredom's immense gravitational pull slows down time itself, each second becoming a vivid and agonizing eternity. The now, the complete immersion, the ability to not worry about the future, is a common trait of the citizens of the kingdom. So don't break into a child's now with pointless interjections about what they're going to be when they grow up. Of course, adults want to know what kind of work they will be doing in the future, but from the child's point of view, they're already doing their work. They're playing. And this is possibly the most rewarding work they will ever undertake. And I consider myself an exile from this kingdom of childhood. Can you actually say that I consider that I am an exile, or that I have been exiled, perhaps, from the kingdom of childhood? Anyway, the kingdom's gate is such that it is difficult to go back through it once you have left. I don't know when I lost my key to the kingdom. The days ran away like wild horses over the hills, and in hindsight that could of course be when it fell out of my pocket. In the playground there are whispered warnings. Before you know it, you're one of them, the adults. And it doesn't happen overnight, like how you don't notice your own hair has grown until you see a picture of yourself from 5 months ago. You don't notice until a younger child asks you to play Star Wars with them, and you realize that you can't. Even when you try, something is missing from the play. You're no longer in it. You're outside, looking in, unable to embody the figurines of Chewbacca and the Hoth Vampa. I have a memory of this from my own childhood, where after trying to get my dad to join me in play, he tried to express something I didn't understand at the time, but that I feel today when my daughter invites me into her play. He said something like, "Play is not as fun for me because I can't see the whole world." He claimed that when I played, I could see everything clearly with ice planets and desert landscapes for my Star Wars figurines to inhabit. And this was odd to the young me, because I didn't see the forest and moon bases beyond the bushes and shrubs outside our house. I saw the piece of grass and the rocky outcrop across from our driveway. The rest was just pretend. It's just play. It wasn't there. I knew the difference between what was there and what was pretend, but I just played that it was. Why didn't he just play that the tarmac was a river and our hedge the Endor moon base? Well, now I know. It's because us adults, we just can't. I can't conjure up the genuine play, which makes it possible to inhabit the consciousness of the little mice and rabbits in cute little outfits which my daughter wants me to play with. I didn't consciously exit the kingdom, yet I find myself on the outside looking in, and that I no longer possess the key to get back inside. So let them stay in the kingdom, because when kids grow up, they don't just gain an adult understanding, they lose something. They too lose the keys to the kingdom of childhood, and we all do. But I, for one, am now trying to learn lockpicking, designing maps with my little girl, sailing the fantasy in ships made from cardboard to steal little glimpses through kitchen paper roll core spyglasses, stealing glimpses of the lost kingdom of childhood, the world she herself is on the cusp of leaving. Turning 7 is a big deal for a child. School, things are changing, thoughts are forming that weren't there before. My girl could have been in school already. If we lived in Australia and not Las Vegas, she could have started school last January. That's like 8 months ago. I find myself wondering nervously whether I am holding her back. Could she be doing algebra by now if I had her in a special maths program? Because she loves numbers, addition, times tables, and reading. She loves reading. Maybe I should buy some kind of product that would help transform her reading out of joy into an accelerated educational learning process. But then I see her piling every single one of her tiny toys and figurines into the toy-sized circus living wagon we bought her at the flea market in Copenhagen. She ties a stuffed black dragon on a leash to the front of it, and the dragon pulls the wagon with every one of her little friends inside it, each mouse in a pretty dress with their own name, each with their own history, a real-world history of where she got it, who gave it to her, on which of the tours around the world it came into her life, but also a history derived from every game she has imagined, invented and experienced with it. Ellie, the little antique one-of-a-kind baby elephant, to our little dog which we had to leave behind in Las Vegas, that he ate half the trunk of it. He just chewed it off when he was very little. It's also Molly the mouse, Nalle and Nella, the baby twin mice, and they all get to be pulled behind Midnight, the black soft dragon she got from a friend in Vegas. And they all journey together with my little girl around the kingdom of childhood, whilst I sit on the couch in my full-sized circus wagon, watching in envy from the outside, and becoming even more certain in my choice not to hurry her along. Yes, don't hurry them along, take our time. Now, I believe there's great depth and potential in showmanship as a way of life, what we've been exploring here. And what we do is valuable, important, and it can be a powerful tool to make the world a better place. And with this whole project, I want to bring integrity and real connection to the world from our stages and street pitches. And if you're along with me on this, if you're coming along the way with me, then I'd like this week for you to send a personal message to one of your friends. Send a personal message telling them about this podcast. I am confident they will be happy to hear from you and to hear about this and to join us along the way. And with that, all that's left to be said is take care of yourself, those you love, and I hope to see you all along the way.